Some of humanity's most stunning structures were built by people whose names we will never know. These shadow architects, the brilliant engineers behind lost ancient megastructures, worked in secrecy, blending profound science with timeless art in stone. Their legendary creations, from the soaring pyramids to entire cities carved underground, completely defy our standard history of what ancient people could achieve. Why were these masterminds systematically erased from our records? And what does their hidden legacy reveal about the true nature of power and innovation? By the end of our journey, you will understand the forgotten principles that allowed these wonders to be built, giving you a new framework for seeing human history. We will investigate how stones weighing 800 tons were moved into perfect position and what celestial secrets are encoded in the desert. What one vanished civilization do you believe held the most profound secrets? Working by torchlight, a single mind charts lines on papyrus that will outlive dynasties. This is the shadow architect, a figure far beyond a simple builder. These conceptual masterminds possessed a unique fusion of skills, merging celestial mathematics with the gritty reality of moving mountains of stone. They understood the subtle tilt of the earth and could calculate the weight a granite block would exert on the sand beneath it. Their genius was both profound and practical, enabling them to execute projects that their contemporaries would have called pure magic. Yet across cultures, from the pharaohs of Egypt to the emperors of Mesopotamia, official histories consistently credit the ruler alone. The king receives the glory, while the true author of the miracle is scrubbed from the record. We see this pattern etched into stone tablets and royal decrees that proclaim a pharaoh's divine inspiration for a temple or a pyramid. But the archaeology tells a different, more technical story. The precise astronomical alignments, the complex stress distribution in masonry, the advanced logistics, all point to a guiding intelligence that the royal chronicles deliberately omit. Consider the rare case of Imhotep, the architect of the step pyramid. He was so brilliant that he was eventually deified, remembered as a god of wisdom. But his fame is the exception that illuminates a dark rule. For every Imhotep who slipped into legend, there were countless others whose names were systematically erased. What did it cost these individuals to pour their lives into a project they would never officially own? How did they safeguard and transmit vast libraries of engineering knowledge, often without leaving a single written manual for us to find? Their silent legacy challenges our most basic assumptions about innovation. It suggests that some of humanity's greatest leaps were not born in the open light of recognition, but in the shadows under the constraint of anonymity. To understand their invisible hands is to begin reading the true history of human achievement, written not in names but in stone. These 3 foundation stones at Baalbek are so immense that they seem to defy the very laws of physics. Each one is a solid piece of limestone, roughly the weight of 2 fully loaded jumbo jets, lifted and slotted into a platform wall with a seam so tight you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. What we see today are the magnificent Roman temples sitting atop this base, but the platform itself is far older, a relic from a civilization so advanced that its name has been lost to time. The shadow architects who designed this were not just builders, they were masters of physics. They understood how to distribute incredible weight so the ground would not buckle, and they devised a method to move 800 tons of stone across nearly a mile of uneven terrain. Modern engineers have theorized about the use of enormous roller systems, complex levers, and the coordinated power of hundreds of workers, yet the exact method remains just out of our grasp. Local folklore fills this void of knowledge with tales of giants who built the site, but these stories only serve to hide the true, and perhaps more astonishing, reality of human genius. What kind of society could organize such a project? How did their chief engineer, their shadow architect, direct the entire operation without a single written plan that has survived? They performed calculations in their mind that we would need computers for today, ensuring the foundation would remain stable for thousands of years. The silent perfection of the Baalbek stones is a direct challenge to our modern arrogance, a message from the past that some secrets of stone and earth are still waiting to be rediscovered. This mastery over the physical world, however, is only one side of their genius. Their next great feat was to turn entire structures into perfect mirrors of the heavens above. The silent, physical mastery of Baalbek finds its echo in a far more ethereal design. Across the desert at Giza, the pyramids do not simply rest upon the earth, they are pinned to the sky itself. The three Great Pyramids are a perfect terrestrial copy of the three stars in Orion's belt, arranged with an accuracy that dismisses any notion of chance. The layout is a sprawling celestial map, where the Nile River intentionally mirrors the cosmic flow of the Milky Way. This grand design remained hidden in plain sight for thousands of years, its true meaning only unlocked with our modern understanding of astronomy. The shadow architects here were not just engineers, they were master astronomers who understood a slow, celestial dance known as the precession of the equinoxes. This is the gradual wobble in Earth's rotation that shifts our view of the stars over a vast cycle of 26,000 years. They designed the Giza complex to act as a permanent marker, capturing a specific snapshot of the heavens. Mathematical analysis reveals something even more profound. The arrangement of the pyramids matches the precise position of Orion's belt not in 2500 BC when they were built, but as it appeared in the sky thousands of years earlier, around 10,500 BC. This means the knowledge behind this alignment was not a sudden invention. It was an ancient tradition, preserved and passed down with incredible fidelity across more than 70 generations before a single stone was laid at Giza. This time span is almost incomprehensible. How did a secretive class of priest engineers maintain such precise astronomical records across centuries of social upheaval and cultural change? What initiation rituals or protected societies were formed to safeguard this cosmic data, ensuring it reached the right minds at the right time? The project required a fusion of deep spiritual vision and flawless technical execution, all orchestrated by unseen geniuses who worked behind the glory of Pharaoh Khufu. Their legacy is a monument that is both a tomb and a timeless observatory, challenging us to wonder what other alignment mysteries are waiting to be read in the stones of the ancient world. While the pyramids reached for the stars, other architects were engineering entire worlds in the opposite direction. Deep beneath the sun-scorched plains of Cappadocia lies a city that defies all conventional logic. Derinkuyu is not a collection of simple caves, but a meticulously planned subterranean metropolis carved directly into volcanic rock, descending 18 full levels into the earth. At its peak, this hidden city could shelter 20,000 people along with their livestock and food stores for months on end. The sheer scale is staggering, but it is the invisible genius of its design that truly astonishes. The shadow architects here faced a completely different set of challenges than their pyramid-building counterparts. Their mastery was not of celestial alignment, but of the dark, silent pressures of the underground. They had to become experts in geology, selecting the perfect stratum of soft yet stable tough rock to carve. They engineered a ventilation system of shafts plunging 180 feet deep, creating a natural airflow that would have circulated fresh air throughout the entire complex, preventing stagnation and allowing for fires to burn without suffocating the inhabitants. This reveals an understanding of atmospheric pressure and air circulation, principles that history books often credit to engineers millennia later. Who was the mastermind that first envisioned a city descending into the earth? The construction was not the work of a single lifetime, but a project that likely spanned centuries, with each generation adding new levels and chambers. This presents an even deeper mystery. How did these successive teams of builders maintain the original architectural vision, and most critically, the structural integrity of the entire city? They installed security measures of breathtaking simplicity and brute force, like massive rolling stone doors, each weighing half a ton, that could seal off entire corridors in an instant. Think of the coordination required, the need for a secret, protected class of engineers who passed down precise plans and warnings. A single miscalculation in a support column or a ventilation shaft could have doomed thousands. How did they solve the perpetual problem of light deep within the mountain? How did they manage waste and water and maintain social order in such a confined, dark space? Derinkuyu stands as a monument to a different kind of ancient brilliance, one focused not on glory and the afterlife, but on sheer survival. It represents the ultimate hidden fortress, a testament to the shadow architect's ability to conquer the world beneath our feet. This same ingenuity, when applied to the most vital resource of all, would lead to hydraulic marvels that transformed entire landscapes. High in the thin air of the Andes, a city turned water into life itself. The pre-Incan metropolis of Tiwanaku is a puzzle of monumental stone gateways and enigmatic statues, but its true genius lies hidden beneath the surface, in a hydraulic network of breathtaking sophistication. Here, shadow architects engineered a system of canals, subterranean drains, and sunken reservoirs that transformed the harsh, arid altiplano into a vast, productive agricultural landscape. Their mastery was not over stars or stone alone, but over the most vital and unpredictable element of all, water. They calculated slopes with such precision that water flowed through the canals at an ideal, constant rate, fast enough to prevent stagnation but slow enough to avoid erosion. They built underground conduits that used the natural pressure of the earth to control the flow, preventing destructive floods during the torrential rainy season, and carefully storing the precious resource for the long, dry months. This was not guesswork. The evidence points to a deep, empirical understanding of principles we would now call fluid dynamics. They lined their reservoirs with layers of specific clay to minimize water loss through seepage and evaporation, and they designed settling tanks that allowed sediment to fall out of the water before it entered the irrigation channels, keeping their system clean and functional for generations. How many seasons of observation, how many trials and errors were encoded into this landscape? The perfectly fitted stones of the canals, which required advanced geometric understanding to calculate volume and flow rates, speak to a mathematical mind at work. Yet this entire body of knowledge, this hydrological library, was built and maintained by a civilization with no known written language. This presents one of the most profound mysteries of the shadow architects. How did the master engineers of Tiwanaku train their apprentices? The knowledge had to be transmitted through an oral tradition of immense rigor, combined with hands-on demonstration, where a single miscalculation in teaching could lead to crop failure and societal collapse. They were creating a living machine, an ecosystem of water and stone that sustained a powerful civilization for centuries, all orchestrated by minds whose names are lost to the wind. This practical genius for moving and managing resources would find an even grander expression in a network designed not for water, but for the movement of an empire. Far to the south, the desert floor itself becomes a canvas for a different kind of genius. Etched across the stark plains of Peru, the Nazca lines present a mystery on a scale so vast it can only be comprehended from the air. These are not structures of stone, but negative space, created by the careful removal of the dark surface pebbles to reveal the lighter earth beneath. For decades, the prevailing theories pointed to celestial calendars or vast ritual pathways for gods to walk. But a more grounded and perhaps more fascinating hypothesis is gaining traction. What if these immense geoglyphs were a sophisticated form of terrestrial navigation, a giant map and guidance system created by shadow architects with an intimate knowledge of their land? The sheer precision of the lines, running arrows straight for miles over hills and valleys, dismisses any idea of haphazard creation. This required an advanced mastery of surveying. The engineers would have used a series of stakes and ropes, perhaps aligned with distant mountain peaks, to maintain their bearing across the uneven terrain. They worked with a standardized unit of measurement, a consistent geometric logic that allowed different teams to work on separate sections of a single, massive pattern, like a spider or a monkey, with their contributions meeting in perfect alignment. The true marvel is their understanding of perspective. These figures were designed to be seen correctly only from a significant altitude. This implies the architects possessed a conceptual grasp of a viewpoint they could never physically experience themselves. They were, in effect, creating a map for users they would never meet. Some researchers have noted compelling correlations between the directions of certain lines and the locations of hidden aquifers or mineral deposits deep below the surface. Could the hummingbird or the condor have been markers, pointing processions of workers or even guiding some form of ancient aerial travel toward vital resources? The organizational power needed for such a project is staggering. A society would need a central planning authority, a class of engineer cartographers who could translate complex geographic and economic data into these sprawling symbols. How did they communicate the grand design to the thousands of laborers who moved the stones? The lines are a testament to a different kind of shadow architect, one who did not build upwards but outwards, turning the entire landscape into a functional and still largely unreadable message. This terrestrial engineering, however, finds a strange parallel in creations that were not meant to be seen at all, but to be heard. The salty depths of the Aegean Sea held a secret that would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. In the year 1901, sponge divers discovered a corroded lump of bronze and wood amid the wreckage of a Roman cargo ship. Decades later, X-ray analysis revealed this object, the Antikythera Mechanism, to be an intricate astronomical calculator of staggering complexity. It was a device that simply should not have existed for another 1,500 years. This was not a simple calendar, but a precise, gear-driven machine that could predict the movements of the sun and moon, forecast eclipses, and even track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. Its creation, around 100 years before the Common Era, points to a school of shadow architects whose genius was expressed not in stone, but in bronze. They were the master watchmakers of the classical world, working in a tradition of mechanical engineering that has otherwise vanished without a trace. The mechanism's interior was a miniature universe of at least 30 interlocking gears, some so fine and tiny they would challenge a modern craftsman to reproduce. These were not simple wheels. The engineers used a concept called differential gearing, a system that allows two speeds to be averaged into a single output. This specific innovation was thought to be an invention of the 16th century, yet here it was in a Greek device, perfectly calculating the moon's subtle, elliptical orbit around the Earth. This single feature reveals a mathematical and astronomical understanding that history had completely forgotten. Who were these individuals? They operated outside the spotlight of famous philosophers, their names absent from every known historical record. They must have worked in small, secretive workshops, passing their knowledge orally or through closely guarded designs. The Antikythera Mechanism itself is believed to be a portable model, a compact version of a larger, temple-based computer used for grand celestial predictions. This implies an entire lineage of lost technology, a hidden tradition of engineering that flourished in the background of Greek society before it was seemingly erased by time, war, or perhaps a deliberate suppression of knowledge. The device's very existence forces us to ask a haunting question. How many other breakthroughs, how many libraries of mechanical wisdom were lost in the fires of Alexandria or the collapse of empires? This artifact is a time capsule from the shadow architects of mechanics, proving their reach extended into the very measurement of time and space. Their legacy, however, was not confined to portable machines. The same principles of celestial observation were being applied on a truly monumental scale, turning entire landscapes into fixed observatories that track the cosmos with silent, stone precision. The silent stone computers of the classical world find their echo in the jungles of Cambodia. Angkor Wat, the world's largest religious structure, is far more than a temple. It is a perfect celestial calendar carved from sandstone. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun rises directly over the central tower, a moment of breathtaking alignment that feels both miraculous and meticulously planned. This is no accident of design. The entire complex is a mirror of the heavens, with its 5 iconic towers corresponding precisely to the stars of the Draco constellation, but not as we see it today. The layout captures the dragon's shape as it would have appeared in the night sky over 10,500 years before the Common Era. This single fact shatters our linear view of history. The shadow architects of the Khmer Empire were not just building for their present, they were encoding a snapshot of a prehistoric sky, preserving astronomical data of unimaginable antiquity. The encoding goes deeper than simple alignments. The dimensions and spatial relationships between the temple's moats, walls, and galleries are a physical representation of Hindu cosmology, specifically the concept of vast cosmic cycles known as yugas. Specific measurements within the complex correspond to the length of the precession of the equinoxes, that same 26,000-year wobble in Earth's axis that the builders of Giza seemed to understand. Here, the knowledge was woven directly into the sacred geometry of a living, breathing place of worship. How did the chief engineers direct the construction of this sprawling code? The project required surveying across hundreds of acres with absolute precision, coordinating the labor of thousands of workers over decades, all while safeguarding the hidden astronomical meaning from being lost or diluted. This points to a highly secretive, initiated class of priest architects. They must have used a rigorous system of oral transmission and ritual, where the deepest secrets of the temple's design were passed only to a select few apprentices under vows of extreme secrecy. A single generation of carelessness could have broken the chain, erasing the meaning from the stones forever. The true function of Angkor Wat was to be a machine for understanding time itself, a bridge between the spiritual and the scientific that challenges us to look at every ancient sacred site with new eyes, wondering what other cosmic truths are waiting, encrypted in plain sight. Deep beneath the island of Malta, a different kind of ancient technology lies dormant, waiting for a voice to bring it to life. The Saflieni hypogeum is not a temple of stone meant for the eyes, but a complex instrument designed for the ears. Carved from solid limestone over millennia, This three-level subterranean labyrinth is humanity's oldest known engineered acoustic space. Its creators were shadow architects of sound, masters of a science we now call psychoacoustics. They did not merely carve rooms, they sculpted the very behavior of sound waves within them. Certain chambers, like the famous Oracle Room, are engineered to resonate at a specific, low frequency of 110 Hz. When a voice is spoken or chanted in this space, the sound is transformed. It does not simply echo, it amplifies and fills the entire chamber with a uniform, penetrating hum that seems to vibrate not just the air but your very bones. Modern research into this specific frequency reveals something astonishing. 110 Hz sits at a threshold known to affect human brain activity. Scientific studies have shown that exposure to sound at this frequency can temporarily shift patterns in the prefrontal cortex, potentially altering states of consciousness, quieting the logical mind, and heightening emotional or spiritual receptivity. The builders of the hypogeum clearly knew this not through electronic measurement, but through centuries of meticulous observation and experimentation. How did they achieve such precision with only stone tools? The process must have been agonizingly slow. A master acoustic engineer would have directed teams of workers, instructing them to chip away minuscule amounts of rock, then testing the chamber's resonance with a deep chant or a struck stone. They were, in effect, tuning the room like a giant musical instrument, using their own bodies as the measuring device. They understood complex principles of sound wave interference, shaping walls and ceilings to cancel out certain frequencies while amplifying others, creating zones of perfect clarity and others of eerie silence. What kind of rituals or initiations were held in these sonic chambers? The experience of a deep, resonant chant at 110 Hz in that enclosed space would have been overwhelming. A visceral technology for connecting the community to the divine or for accessing altered states of awareness. This was not magic, it was a sophisticated application of physics, a lost science of architectural psychology designed to directly interface with the human mind. The shadow architects of the hypogeum prove that ancient genius was not limited to what we can see, but extended into the invisible, vibrational fabric of reality itself. This mastery over the sensory environment finds a brutal, practical counterpart in the ultimate hidden fortresses, where the primary goal was not enlightenment but sheer, unbreakable defense. High on a sheer rock column in Sri Lanka, a fortress palace merges beauty with brutal efficiency. Sigiriya rises 660 feet above the surrounding plains, an inaccessible stronghold that represents the ultimate expression of ancient defensive genius. Its shadow architects were not merely builders, they were masters of military strategy and psychological warfare. They designed the entire approach to the summit as a series of deliberate, devastating bottlenecks. Invaders would first have to cross wide moats, only to be funneled into narrow gateways where they could be picked off by defenders from above. The entire pathway up the rock was flanked by walls polished to a mirror finish. These were not for vanity, they served a critical tactical purpose, reflecting the movement of ascending enemies, allowing a handful of guards at the top to anticipate every attack vector. But the true marvel of Sigiriya lies in its ability to endure a prolonged siege. The architects engineered a hydraulic system that seems to defy gravity, channeling water all the way to the summit to fill bathing pools and supply reservoirs. They used a combination of underground pressure pipes and cleverly carved channels that followed the rock's natural fissures, ensuring the ruler and his garrison would never thirst. This integration of sustainable living with impenetrable defense reveals a holistic mind at work. What previous battles informed these innovations? The layout suggests a deep understanding of how invasion forces behave under stress, using the terrain to induce confusion and panic. How did they test these deadly corridors without a real army to assault them? The answer likely lies in Chinese letter in war games and scaled models, where the chief engineer could simulate breaches and refine the defenses. The beautiful water gardens at the base of the rock present a final, chilling contrast. They were designed to project an image of serene power, even as they concealed the machinery of a death trap. Sigiriya stands as a complete defensive ecosystem, proving that the shadow architect's greatest skill was not just in building walls, but in anticipating the relentless creativity of any foe who would dare to breach them. The silent, defensive genius of Sigiriya stands in stark contrast to a different kind of ancient achievement, one defined not by stationary strength but by relentless, deliberate motion. On the remote island of Rapa Nui, the great stone moai present a mystery of movement. These colossal figures, some weighing over 80 tons, were carved from a single quarry and then transported miles across rugged, hilly terrain to their final coastal platforms. The shadow architects who orchestrated this feat faced an unparalleled logistical puzzle, one that modern engineers still struggle to solve. Their solution demonstrates a profound, almost intuitive grasp of physics, leverage, and the power of coordinated human effort. Recent experimental archaeology has revived a compelling theory, one drawn from local oral tradition. It suggests the moai were not dragged horizontally, but were instead walked upright to their destinations. Teams of workers would have used a complex system of ropes to rock the statue forward in a careful, rhythmic sway, shifting its center of gravity with each tiny, deliberate step. This method, while appearing precarious, would have been remarkably efficient, requiring far less brute force than dragging. But it demanded something far more valuable, an engineer's mind capable of calculating the precise pivot point for each statue, a point that would be unique to its individual shape and weight distribution. A single miscalculation in this live physics experiment would have sent the multi-ton giant crashing to the ground, shattering centuries of work in an instant. Alternative theories propose the use of sophisticated sleds and roller systems, ingeniously crafted from the island's limited palm tree resources. This would have required the architects to be masters of soil mechanics, preparing and hardening pathways to bear the immense, concentrated weight without collapsing. They had to become experts in statistical risk management, planning for every possible failure point along the route. And behind the physics lay an even greater challenge, the logistics of sustaining the workforce itself. How did they organize and feed the hundreds of laborers needed for such an undertaking on an isolated island with finite resources? The movement of the moai is a testament to a society that had perfected practical physics in isolation. It forces us to wonder what other methods for moving the immovable have been lost to time, their secrets buried with the engineers who never wrote a single formula down, but who could make stone walk. The scattered stones of Puma Punku look less like ruins and more like a master engineer's toolkit discarded by giants. Each block of andesite and granite is a geometric marvel, cut with such impossible precision that the surfaces are flat to within 1/100th of an inch, a tolerance we would struggle to achieve without laser-guided machinery. These stones, some weighing 130 tons, are not simply stacked. They are intricately keyed, fitting together with complex tabs and notches like pieces of a colossal, indestructible puzzle. The shadow architects of this Bolivian highland site were not just builders, they were master geometers and materials scientists. They selected andesite, an extremely hard stone akin to diamond in its resistance, and then they worked it as if it were soft wood. They carved perfect, right-angled channels, bored holes with mathematically consistent diameters, and created recesses so precise that they interlock without a hint of mortar. This was not decorative artistry, it was functional engineering of the highest order. The entire design philosophy was based on a deep, empirical understanding of seismic activity. The interlocking blocks were meant to dance, not break. During an earthquake, the complex joints would allow the structure to shift and sway as a single, flexible unit, dissipating the Earth's violent energy without collapsing. This reveals a knowledge of structural dynamics that is astonishing for any ancient culture. The true mystery, however, lies in the manufacturing. The geometric consistency across hundreds of surviving stones points to something never before seen in the ancient world, a system of standardized production. Each H-shaped block is identical to the next, implying the use of precise measuring templates and a rigorous quality control process where any piece that failed to meet the exacting standard was rejected. What tools could possibly have achieved this? Modern experiments with copper and stone tools on andesite produce only scratches. The builders must have possessed a lost technology, perhaps involving abrasive compounds harder than the stone itself, or some form of sonic vibration that we have not yet rediscovered. How did the chief architect ensure that every single artisan across multiple generations adhered to the same microscopic tolerances? The knowledge required was so advanced and so specific that its sudden disappearance is as profound as its existence. Puma Punku stands as a silent, shattered factory of stone, a monument to a technological peak that was reached and then completely lost. This mastery over the most unforgiving materials finds a parallel in the ancient world's command over a far more fluid and treacherous element, the open sea. Off the coast of Japan, a submerged world holds a secret that could rewrite human history. The Yonaguni Monument lies beneath the waves, a sprawling complex of massive terraces, sharp 90-degree angles, and what look unmistakably like carved staircases and pillars. To swim through this silent, sunken city is to feel the ghost of a lost civilization. The central debate has raged for decades. Is this a stunning natural formation or the work of human hands? The sheer regularity of the features tips the scale, with clean, straight walls and repetitive, geometric patterns that nature rarely, if ever, produces with such consistency. If this was the work of shadow architects, they were operating under a constraint no pyramid builder ever faced, the certain knowledge that their creation would one day be claimed by the sea. These engineers would have worked over 10,000 years ago during the last ice age, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower, and this area was dry land. They planned and built with an understanding of long-term geological and climatic cycles that we typically ascribe only to modern science. They were not just building for their present, they were creating a monument with the foreknowledge of a coming deluge, a project that required a profound sense of time and an advanced understanding of tidal patterns and sea level rise. How do you even begin to quarry and shape such rock on that scale with only stone tools? The rock itself, a sandstone-like sedimentary formation, is relatively easier to work than granite, but the sheer volume of material removed to create these platforms and channels suggests a coordinated society with significant maritime engineering capabilities. The precise angles and step designs bear a haunting resemblance to other megalithic sites, from the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the pyramids of Latin America. This invites a tantalizing question: could Yonaguni be a marker on a forgotten seafaring route, a testament to a pan-Pacific culture of shadow architects whose influence spanned the ancient ocean? The true mystery of Yonaguni is not just in its creation, but in its intended legacy. What message were these architects trying to send across the millennia, entrusting their work not to the shifting sands of the desert, but to the enduring, silent custody of the sea? The silent geometry of Teotihuacan speaks a language of pure mathematics. Walking the avenue of the dead, you are traversing a colossal calculation laid out in stone. The shadow architects of this metropolis did more than align their city to the stars. They encoded fundamental constants of the universe into its very blueprint. The perimeter of the Pyramid of the Sun, for instance, holds a startling secret. Its base perimeter is precisely 4 times its height, a ratio that yields the mathematical constant pi. This is not a rough approximation, but a relationship of such accuracy that it reveals a deliberate, sophisticated understanding of this irrational number centuries before it was formally defined in Europe. This pattern of encoded knowledge deepens with the Pyramid of the Moon and the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, where the proportions between their dimensions subtly express the base of the natural logarithm, known as e. These two numbers, pi and e, are the bedrock of higher mathematics and physics, constants that govern the shape of circles and the growth of all natural phenomena. How did the city's planners discover and then physically manifest these abstract truths without a symbolic written number system? Their genius was one of applied geometry, translating invisible numerical relationships into the tangible, massive scale of an entire city. But their cosmic vision did not stop there. The spacing between the Great Pyramids mirrors the distances between the planets in our own solar system when scaled down by a consistent factor. The city itself becomes an orrery, a 3-dimensional model of celestial mechanics. This was all anchored to a very specific earthly orientation. The entire grid of Teotihuacan is rotated 15.5 degrees east of true north, a precise alignment that targeted the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster. In Mesoamerican cosmology, the Pleiades were deeply associated with creation and the cyclical nature of time, marking the beginning of new eras. This single alignment connected the city's daily reality to a grand cosmic clock. The sheer breadth of this encoded knowledge points unequivocally to a hidden scholarly class, a secret society of astronomer mathematicians who worked for generations behind the scenes. How did they initiate new members into this profound tradition? The knowledge was likely protected through rigorous oral teaching and ritual, where complex formulas were memorized as sacred chants or embedded in the steps of a ceremonial dance. A single mistake in transmission could corrupt the entire cosmic design. Teotihuacan stands as their ultimate masterpiece, a library of stone where every measurement is a sentence and every alignment is a chapter in a lost scientific text. This deep understanding of cosmic and terrestrial proportions suggests these architects saw the world as a unified field of energy, a concept that finds its ultimate expression in structures designed not just to observe the heavens, but to harness the very forces of the earth. The silent precision of Puma Punkus interlocking stones points to a method beyond levers and ramps. A whisper of something far more elegant echoes from the legends of the ancients themselves, the possibility that sound itself was used as a tool to move mountains. This is the theory of acoustic levitation, a lost science where shadow architects mastered the physics of vibration to manipulate matter. Tibetan monks recount stories of their ancestors using massive trumpets and drums to generate specific harmonic frequencies that lifted blocks into place for mountaintop monasteries. In Egypt, there are fragmented tales of priests chanting in unison to guide obelisks from quarry to foundation. At its core, this is not magic, but a sophisticated application of resonance. Every object, from a tiny grain of sand to a 100-ton monolith, has a natural vibrational frequency. The theory suggests that these ancient engineers learned to match and amplify that frequency, creating a powerful standing wave of sound that could, in effect, cancel out gravity's pull. The stone would become temporarily weightless, gliding on a cushion of pure energy, guided into perfect position by a handful of workers. Modern laboratories have proven the principle is real. Scientists today use ultrasonic speakers to levitate small droplets of water and polystyrene beads in mid-air, demonstrating that focused acoustic energy can indeed overcome gravity. The challenge is one of scale, requiring an immense and precisely coordinated source of power to lift objects thousands of times larger. What kind of instruments could have achieved this? Imagine enormous, chambered horns carved from solid rock, or vast, tuned drums made from stretched hides, all arranged in a perfect circle around a stone block. The shadow architect would be the conductor of this invisible orchestra, directing teams to strike or blow at the exact moment and pitch to build the necessary resonant field. The knowledge would have been incredibly dangerous and powerful, requiring absolute secrecy. An initiate would need to learn not just the frequencies for different types of stone, but also the precise geometry of the sound array and the critical timing needed for synchronization. A single mistake in the harmonic sequence could shatter the block or release the energy uncontrollably. This explains why such a revolutionary technology seems to vanish from the historical record. It was not written down but passed as a sacred, oral science, vulnerable to being lost forever if the chain of masters and apprentices was broken by war or social collapse. The acoustic levitation hypothesis forces us to reconsider every impossibly fitted stone we have encountered. It suggests that the true tools of the shadow architects were not made of copper or rope, but of air and vibration, a physics of harmony that turned the very atmosphere into their most powerful crane. A colossal serpent slithers across the Ohio landscape, its coils frozen in an earthwork so vast you must stand on a nearby tower to see its entire form. The Great Serpent Mound is a 1,300-foot-long sculpture of soil and stone, a masterpiece of landscape engineering where the shadow architect's canvas was the earth itself. Its body undulates in 7 distinct curves, culminating in a head that seems to swallow a large, oval-shaped mound, an eternal symbol of cosmic consumption and renewal. This was not random art. Every curve was a deliberate calculation, a line of sight etched into the terrain. The serpent's head aligns precisely with the summer solstice sunset, while its coiled body points to the winter solstice sunrise and the equinox sunrises. It functioned as a giant, immovable calendar, marking the passage of the seasons with silent terrestrial authority, but its celestial knowledge ran even deeper. Some researchers propose that the 3 primary coils align with the extreme rising and setting points of the moon during its 18.6-year cycle, a complex event known as a lunar standstill. Others see a correlation with the appearance of Halley's Comet, a brilliant visitor that would have streaked across the night sky, perfectly framed by the serpent's open jaws at specific returns. How did these engineers achieve such precision across such hilly, uneven ground? They were masters of applied geometry and optical illusion. As you walk the path alongside the mound, the serpent appears to move, its body rippling with a lifelike motion created by the careful manipulation of perspective and elevation. This required the chief architect to possess a god's eye view of the entire site long before the first basket of earth was moved. They planned the entire structure using ropes, stakes, and sighting poles, translating celestial angles into tangible slopes and curves. The construction itself reveals a deep understanding of soil mechanics. The builders selected specific clay and stone for the core, then layered different soils on top to ensure stability and proper drainage, preventing their colossal sculpture from being washed away by centuries of rain. What was the ultimate purpose of this winding giant? Was it a sacred space for rituals tied to the agricultural cycle, a celestial observatory for a priestly class, or a territorial marker imbued with spiritual power? The most profound mystery lies in the transmission of the design. Without a written language, the master plan had to be held entirely in memory. communicated through song, story, or ceremonial dance that encoded every measurement and alignment. A single forgotten verse could have meant a misplaced coil, throwing the entire cosmic clock out of sync. The Great Serpent Mound forces us to see the land as these architects did, not as a blank slate, but as a living partner in a grand celestial dialogue. The fortress of Sacsayhuaman presents a puzzle of interlocking stone that defies simple explanation. Its colossal limestone blocks, some weighing 200 tons, are locked together in a mesmerizing three-dimensional jigsaw. The joints are so impossibly tight that after 500 years of violent earthquakes, you still cannot force a razor blade between them. This was not mere construction, it was a masterclass in applied physics. The shadow architects of the Inca, or perhaps a much older civilization, were not just stacking rocks, they were engineering a dynamic system designed to dance with the earth itself. They understood concepts like specific gravity, knowing the exact density and weight of their materials, and compressive strength, calculating how much force each stone could bear before fracturing. Instead of relying on weak mortar, they chose a far more brilliant solution, creating intricate, irregular shapes that interlocked on multiple planes. Each block has numerous facets, some convex, some concave, all fitting perfectly against their neighbors. This complex fitting acts like a giant shock absorber. When an earthquake strikes, the energy is not concentrated in a single weak point. Instead, it is dissipated across thousands of tiny contact surfaces, making the entire wall shift and settle as a single, flexible unit, then return to its original position. The famous zigzag patterns of the walls are not just for show, they are a deliberate design to deflect and channel seismic forces laterally, preventing a straight-line collapse. How did they achieve this microscopic precision across such monstrous stones? The evidence points to the use of sophisticated templates, perhaps made of wood or clay, that allowed different work crews to shape individual blocks to a universal standard. This ensured that a stone carved by one team on a distant hillside would still fit perfectly with a stone shaped by another team years later. What mathematical principles allowed them to calculate these complex, multi-angled cuts without the language of algebra or calculus? They must have possessed a deep, intuitive geometry, a hands-on knowledge of space and form that was passed down through generations of master masons. The most startling aspect of Sacsayhuaman is that this technology appears in the archaeological record with no clear evidence of a slower, developmental phase. It is as if this profound understanding of seismic engineering and stone fitting appeared fully formed, a gift from the past that challenges our very model of technological progress. This pattern of sudden, unexplained sophistication forces us to look for its echoes in another part of the world, where an entire city was built with a similar, secret mastery over a far more fluid and dangerous element. Beneath the turquoise waters of Alexandria's harbor lie the sunken fingerprints of its true creators. While the legendary pharaoh's lighthouse captivated the ancient world, its hidden strength was engineered below the waves on a foundation built to defy the sea itself. Modern divers exploring the site do not find scattered ruins, but a submerged landscape of colossal stone blocks, some weighing 70 tons, arranged into complex platforms and breakwaters. These are the remains of a maritime engineering project of staggering ambition, all orchestrated by shadow architects who mastered the invisible forces of the ocean. Their first and greatest challenge was the harbor floor itself, a soft, unstable sediment that could never support the weight of a 350-foot tower. Their solution was a masterpiece of foundational genius, They did not simply drop stones into the water. They first laid a grid of immense, interlocking wooden caissons, massive watertight chambers that were sunk into place and then pumped dry, creating temporary dry docks on the seabed. Inside these artificial enclosures, teams could work to prepare a stable base, layering stone and hydraulic concrete that would cure underwater, a Roman invention known as pozzolana. This concrete was not just durable, it was actually designed to set and gain strength through chemical reaction with salt water, creating an indestructible bond that has lasted over 2,000 years. How did they conduct their underwater surveys without sonar or even clear glass for diving masks? The evidence suggests they used trained free divers, men who could hold their breath for minutes at a time, to descend and carefully feel the contours of the seafloor, reporting back on the topography. Surface teams would then use weighted lines and plumb bobs to map the depths, creating a rough but effective bathymetric chart. Placing the massive foundation stones with precision required another brilliant innovation. Engineers likely constructed enormous barges which were floated into position at high tide. The stones were then carefully rolled off the side, guided by ropes and perhaps even primitive pulleys, to settle onto the prepared subsea platform. The timing of the tide was critical, using the water's own buoyancy to assist in the final, gentle placement of each multi-ton block. But the shadow architect's vision extended far beyond the lighthouse base. They designed the entire harbor as an integrated system. The Great Breakwater, the Heptastadion, was not a simple wall. It was a carefully calculated structure, its angle and porosity designed to dissipate the energy of storm waves, protecting the moored ships within from being dashed against the quays. They understood sediment transport, how currents would carry sand and silt, and they designed the harbor entrance to minimize this natural dredging effect, preventing the port from silting up. This was hydrodynamics in practice, a science we would not formalize for another millennium. The scale of coordination is almost unimaginable. It required a hidden admiralty of engineers, directing teams of divers, barge captains, and stonemasons in a symphony of synchronized labor, all for a foundation that would remain forever hidden from public view. Their legacy is a testament to a forgotten truth, that some of the ancient world's most visible marvels were utterly dependent on the genius concealed beneath the waves. 5,000 years ago, a beam of sunlight pierced the perpetual dark of a sacred tomb. In the heart of the Irish countryside, the massive, circular mound of Newgrange stands as a silent sentinel, its most profound secret hidden within a simple, narrow opening above the entrance known as a roof box. For just 17 minutes at dawn, on a handful of days surrounding the winter solstice, a single shaft of golden light travels down a long, stone passageway to flood the central chamber with the year's first triumphant light. This was no happy accident of construction. It is the signature of a shadow architect who possessed a sophisticated, almost obsessive understanding of the solar cycle. The entire structure, 250,000 tons of stone and earth, was oriented with breathtaking precision, aligned to the solstice sunrise to within a single inch of perfect accuracy. Consider the sheer difficulty of this task, accomplished over 5 millennia ago, centuries before the first stone of Stonehenge was even placed. These Neolithic engineers had no metal tools, no written language, and no formal mathematics as we know it. Their genius was one of pure, patient observation. They must have used a system of wooden stakes and sighting posts, observing the sun's creeping path along the horizon for years, perhaps for generations, to pinpoint the exact location where the sun would crest the distant hills on the shortest day of the year. The placement of the roof box itself is a masterstroke of optical engineering, a slit calculated not just for alignment, but to create a focused, penetrating beam that would reach the chamber's deepest recess. How many failed attempts, how many slight adjustments to the passageway's angle were made before the final design was locked in stone? The corbelled roof that shelters this celestial event is another testament to their invisible skill. Each layer of flat stone is slightly cantilevered inward, shifting its weight until the entire vault seals itself shut at the top, a self-supporting dome that has defied 5,000 Irish winters without a single leak. This reveals a profound understanding of load distribution and water runoff, physics principles that kept the inner sanctum bone dry for centuries. The white quartz facade that once glittered in the sun and the massive curbstones encircling the mound are covered in spirals, diamonds, and concentric circles. These are not random decorations. Many researchers see them as a complex symbolic language, a codex of carved stone that may chart lunar cycles, stellar movements, or even the longer, more elusive precession of the equinoxes. This poses the ultimate mystery of Newgrange. How was this vast body of astronomical data, this precise engineering blueprint, preserved and transmitted across the generations without a single written word? The knowledge required to build such a precise instrument had to be protected with absolute fervor. It would have been the sacred duty of a select few, a hidden class of astronomer priests who passed the measurements down through oral tradition, ritual, and maybe even dance, where a misremembered step or a forgotten chant could mean the solstice sun would miss its mark for all eternity. Newgrange proves that the shadow architect is not a figure confined to the deserts of Egypt or the jungles of Cambodia. They walk the green hills of prehistoric Europe, their minds fixed on the horizon, turning a tomb of stone into a perfect, eternal clock for the rebirth of the sun. While the great pyramids and temples captured the heavens, another group of shadow architects was perfecting the art of urban life itself. In the fertile Indus Valley, the city of Mohenjo-Daro presents a different kind of ancient miracle, one of stunningly practical genius. Here, the master engineers turned their attention not to the stars, but to the flow of water, creating a hydraulic system so advanced that European cities would not match its sophistication for another 4,000 years. Walking through its carefully planned grid of streets, you would have found a public well within easy reach of every neighborhood, ensuring fresh water for all. Each home was connected to a city-wide network of covered, brick-lined drains that ran beneath the streets, carrying waste away from populated areas. This was not a haphazard setup. The entire system was built with a precise understanding of the hydraulic gradient, the subtle slope that keeps water moving at a constant, self-cleaning pace. The engineers calculated these gradients with such accuracy that the drains never flowed too slowly, which would cause blockages, or too quickly, which would erode the brick channels. They even incorporated clever sedimentation tanks at key points, allowing sand and grit to settle out of the water before it entered the main system, a simple yet brilliant form of preventative maintenance. How did they achieve such uniform water pressure across the entire city without modern pumps? The answer lies in their mastery of gravity and elevation. The city itself was built on a massive, man-made platform of mud brick, deliberately raised to create the necessary height differential. The shadow architects planned the entire urban landscape as a single, integrated machine for living, where the elevation of a street or the slope of a drain was as carefully considered as the foundation of a temple. This incredible coordination points to a powerful, centralized authority, a council of engineer planners who enforced strict building codes. The bricks used throughout Mohenjo-Daro are all standardized to the same perfect ratio, meaning a brick made in one kiln would fit perfectly with a brick made in another, miles away. This required a system of quality control and measurement that was enforced across the entire civilization. The crown jewel of their hydraulic genius is the Great Bath, a large, waterproofed pool at the city's center. Its builders used finely fitted bricks sealed with a thick layer of natural bitumen, a tar-like substance that made the structure effectively watertight. This was not just for ritual purity, it was a public health innovation, a place for communal hygiene in the heart of the city. What kind of society granted such authority to its engineers? How did these planners manage the logistics of maintaining this complex network, training new generations to understand the subtle slopes and pressures that kept the city healthy? The mysterious decline of Mohenjo-Daro and the Indus Valley civilization represents one of history's greatest losses. When this urban knowledge faded, humanity would spend millennia relearning the principles of clean water and sanitation that these forgotten masters had perfected in the shadows. What if the Great Pyramids were not built but grown? A radical idea challenges the very stones of Giza, proposing that these colossal blocks were not dragged from distant quarries, but poured into place like a modern concrete. This is the Geopolymer Theory, a concept that reframes the shadow architects as master chemists. Microscopic analysis of stones from the Great Pyramid reveals tiny, trapped air bubbles and fragments of organic material, features you would expect in a manufactured composite, not in a piece of naturally formed limestone. If true, these engineers possessed a secret recipe, a sophisticated knowledge of material science that allowed them to create an artificial stone. They would have mixed crushed limestone with a specific clay binder and natron, a natural salt from the Egyptian desert. When combined with water, this slurry would undergo a chemical reaction, hardening over time into a block that is chemically identical to natural stone, yet perfectly uniform and incredibly durable. This single innovation solves multiple enigmas at once. It explains how workers achieved such impossibly tight joints between multi-ton blocks, as the material could be poured to fill every microscopic irregularity. It accounts for the logistical nightmare of moving millions of stones, replacing it with the simpler task of transporting raw, pourable slurry in baskets. And it clarifies the mysterious absence of quarry marks on so many of the pyramid's core stones, because they were never cut from a living rock face. Think of the centuries of trial and error that must have preceded this breakthrough. How many failed mixtures did an anonymous chemist engineer test in a hidden workshop before discovering the perfect formula? What natural cues did they follow, perhaps observing how certain muds hardened in the sun or how mineral-rich water cemented sediments together? The creation of a reliable geopolymer is not a simple trick. It requires precise control over the chemical composition, the water content, and the curing environment. A batch mixed too wet would not hold its shape, while one mixed too dry would fail to bond. The knowledge was so powerful, so transformative, that its eventual disappearance is as significant as its discovery. Was this chemical wisdom deliberately suppressed by a ruling class to maintain a monopoly on monumental construction, or was it simply lost when the dynasties that employed these geniuses finally fell? This theory forces a complete re-evaluation of ancient technological progress. It suggests the shadow architects were not just astronomers and physicists, but alchemists of stone, turning the very earth beneath their feet into a malleable clay they could shape into eternity. Their legacy is not just in the structures that survive, but in the ghost of a chemistry that we are only now beginning to decipher. A 25,000-mile web of stone and earth stitches together the spine of the Andes. The Inca road system was not a single path but a vast, interconnected network, a megastructure in linear form that conquered the world's most brutal geography without the wheel, without iron, and without a single written blueprint. The shadow architects behind this achievement were masters of terrain itself, They did not simply follow the easiest path, they engineered the most efficient one, scaling vertical cliff faces with stone staircases, plunging into deep valleys with rope suspension bridges, and tunneling directly through mountains of unyielding granite. Their understanding of material science was profound. In the humid lowlands, they built raised causeways to stay above floodwaters, while in the unstable highlands, they paved the roads with fitted stone to prevent erosion from torrential rains. They even installed drainage canals running alongside the paths, a simple innovation that preserved the roadbed for centuries. Each decision was a calculated response to the environment, a deep, empirical knowledge of geology, hydrology, and climate patterns passed down through generations of anonymous engineers. How did they possibly survey a route across thousands of miles of such fractured and treacherous landscape? Without satellites or even detailed maps, they relied on an advanced system of sightlines. Teams of surveyors would have been stationed on opposing mountain peaks, using reflected sunlight or smoke signals to communicate alignments, plotting the road's course one visible segment at a time. The mathematical principles guiding their route selection reveal a genius for practical geometry. They consistently chose gradients that were steep enough to be direct, yet gradual enough for a laden llama or a marching soldier to traverse without exhaustion, calculating the optimal balance between distance and effort. This required a standardized unit of measurement and a shared understanding of angles that was communicated across the entire empire. The most breathtaking feats were the bridges. Across deep ravines, they constructed suspension bridges from a single, resilient material, woven grass. These were not fragile ropes. Teams of artisans would braid thick cables, some as wide as a human torso, which were then stretched across the chasm and woven into a walkway that could flex and sway with the wind. Remarkably, these organic structures were so strong they could support a column of Spanish conquistadors in full armor, yet they were lightweight and could be repaired or replaced by local communities as part of a rotating labor tax. This points to the ultimate secret of the road's success, a sophisticated system of administration and technical standardization that empowered local populations to maintain their section according to the universal principles set down by the empire's unseen master planners. The entire network was a living, breathing entity, a circulatory system that allowed information, goods, and armies to flow at a speed that would not be matched in the region for centuries. The true monument is not the stone path you can see, but the invisible framework of knowledge that conceived it, a hidden highway of the mind that allowed an empire to think and move as one. A compass needle does not lie, yet on the Giza plateau it can behave as if it has lost its mind. Scientific surveys have revealed profound magnetic anomalies across the pyramid complex, areas where the Earth's own magnetic field seems to warp and intensify in ways that geology alone cannot explain. At specific points, particularly near the apex of the Great Pyramid and within the confines of the so-called King's Chamber, instruments detect pockets of concentrated electromagnetic energy. This is not random static, but a structured phenomenon that suggests the very stones were placed to interact with invisible planetary forces. The shadow architects here appear to have been masters of geomancy, the ancient art of reading and harnessing the Earth's subtle energies. Their blueprint reveals a deep understanding of the land's hidden anatomy. The pyramids sit directly atop a major geological fault line and are positioned with uncanny precision relative to vast underground aquifers. These water channels flowing deep beneath the sand generate weak electrical currents known as telluric currents as they move through mineral-rich rock. The architects, it seems, knew exactly how to use their stone monuments to tap into this natural power grid. Modern experiments provide a tantalizing clue. Researchers have found that the pyramid shape itself acts as a passive resonator for electromagnetic waves, naturally focusing microwave energy into its internal chambers and base. Was this a known property, a deliberate feature engineered into the world's most famous structures? How could ancient builders have detected these faint energy fields without modern digital sensors? They may have used tools of breathtaking simplicity and intuition. Polished obsidian mirrors could have been used to sense variations in terrestrial magnetism by observing the way light polarized over different rock formations. Long copper rods planted in the earth at key points might have tingled in the hands of a sensitive operator, indicating the flow of subterranean currents. Or perhaps they relied on dowsing, a practice often dismissed today, but one that could have been a refined science for mapping the energetic veins of the planet. The very materials they chose tell a story. The granite used in the pyramid's inner chambers is rich in quartz crystals, a mineral known for its piezoelectric properties, meaning it generates a small electrical charge under mechanical stress. As the Earth subtly shifts and the pyramid settles over millennia, these stones could be producing their own faint internal energy. This merging of spirituality and physics challenges our categories. For these ancient masters, building a sacred site was not just about aligning with stars above, but about plugging into the living energy of the earth below. Their work suggests a forgotten world, where a temple was not merely a place of worship, but a functional device, a battery for forces we are only now learning to measure. The silent pressure of the earth demanded a different kind of architectural genius. Far beneath the fairy tale landscape of Cappadocia, with its towering rock cones, lies a hidden world of breathtaking complexity. Here, shadow architects did not build upward but downward, carving entire cities from the soft volcanic tuff. These were not simple caves. They were meticulously planned multi-level metropolises, complete with living quarters, churches, storage silos, wineries, and even dedicated cemeteries, all woven together by kilometers of meticulously carved tunnels. The sheer scale is staggering, but the true marvel lies in the invisible infrastructure that made life possible deep within the rock. Ventilating these deep spaces was their first monumental challenge. They engineered a system of vertical connection shafts, some plunging over 100 feet, that acted like a subterranean lung. These shafts created a natural convection current, drawing stale, warm air up and out while pulling cool, fresh air down through the tunnels, a perfect understanding of airflow dynamics that kept thousands of people breathing. Structural integrity was a constant concern. The architects had to be master geologists, selecting the ideal strata of rock, firm enough to hold its shape, yet soft enough to be carved with primitive tools. They left massive, uncut pillars at regular intervals to support the weight of the levels above, calculating load distribution with an intuition that has kept these chambers intact for millennia. In an arid environment, managing water was a life or death calculation. They carved intricate collections channels to divert meager rainwater into deep, plaster-lined cisterns, ensuring a hidden supply that could outlast a siege. Every corridor was a potential death trap for invaders, designed with sudden bottlenecks, low ceilings to force a stoop, and rolling stone doors, immense discs that could be slid into place to seal off entire sections in an instant. The tunnels themselves are a testament to a lost art of subterranean surveying. How did these engineers navigate through miles of solid rock, maintaining such straight lines and consistent, gentle gradients without any modern guidance? They likely used a system of aligned oil lamps or reflected light from polished metal mirrors to sight their path through the perpetual darkness, a slow, painstaking process where a single misalignment would result in a dead end or a dangerous collapse. Some of these tunnels stretch for miles, connecting separate underground settlements into a vast, secret network. This required not just a map, but a shared mental blueprint held by a secretive class of engineers who passed their knowledge from one generation to the next. The precision of these excavations speaks of a profound, hands-on understanding of rock mechanics, where every strike of the tool was informed by centuries of accumulated experience. To walk these silent passages is to feel the presence of these unseen planners, whose ultimate ambition was to conquer the world beneath our feet, creating a sanctuary so complete it could sustain an entire civilization in the heart of the mountain. A serpent of light and shadow descends the pyramid of Kukulkan. For a few breathtaking minutes during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase, connecting the carved stone serpent heads at the base to its illuminated body above. This is no fleeting miracle of nature, but a precisely engineered spectacle, a signature of the shadow architects who transformed this entire city into a working astronomical computer. The pyramid itself is a complex calendar rendered in stone. Each of its 4 sides has 91 steps, which adds up to 364. The single platform at the summit acts as the final step, completing the 365 days of the solar year. This mathematical elegance is woven directly into the structure's physical form, a permanent record of celestial time. But the genius of these planners extended beyond vision into the realm of sound. A hand clap at the base of the pyramid's stairs returns not as a simple echo, but as a piercing chirp that perfectly mimics the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. This was achieved through the careful calculation of the step dimensions and their angles, creating an acoustic filter that transforms random noise into a specific, symbolic sound. The entire city is a web of such alignments. The main pyramid is positioned to frame the setting sun on specific dates, while the massive ball court and the mysterious observatory known as El Caracol are oriented to track the complex cycles of Venus. This planet, deeply significant in Mayan cosmology, has a 584-day cycle that was meticulously observed and encoded into the spatial relationships between these distant structures. How did a society without telescopes or modern mathematics achieve such interstellar precision across a sprawling urban plan constructed over generations? The answer lies in a hidden tradition of observational science. These shadow architects used simple, yet profoundly effective, tools like sighting poles and horizon markers, accumulating centuries of data on planetary movements. They developed a sophisticated mathematical system, including the concept of zero, which allowed them to perform the complex calculations needed to project these cosmic cycles onto the physical landscape. The true marvel is the continuity of their vision. Different rulers and generations of builders adhered to the same sacred blueprint, preserving the astronomical code without deviation. This required a secretive, initiated class of astronomer priests who safeguarded the geometric and numerical principles, passing them down through an oral tradition of immense rigor. A single forgotten alignment could break the entire celestial machine. Chichen Itza stands as a silent challenge, proving that the most advanced engineering begins not with tools, but with a deep, patient conversation with the sky. A single man working in the dark of night moved blocks of coral heavier than elephants. Edward Leedskalnin, a frail Latvian immigrant, single-handedly built what we now call Coral Castle in Florida, a complex of massive stone structures carved and set with impossible precision. From 1923 to 1951, he labored in secret, often at night, hiding his methods from prying eyes. He claimed he had rediscovered the building secrets of the ancient Egyptians, the very principles of physics that allowed the shadow architects to levitate stone. The centerpiece of his work is a revolving gate made from a single piece of coral weighing 9 tons, so perfectly balanced that a child can push it open with a single finger. This is not a feat of brute strength but of profound understanding. How could one man, without formal education or access to machinery, achieve what today requires cranes and hydraulic lifts? Leedskalnin himself spoke of understanding the laws of weight and leverage, and of mastering the secrets of magnetism and celestial forces. He hinted at a forgotten science of perpetual motion holders, devices that could capture the Earth's own energy. The stones themselves are fitted together without mortar, their seams as tight as those at Sacsayhuaman or Puma Punku, and certain alignments within the complex correspond to solstices and other astronomical events. This suggests his knowledge extended beyond simple mechanics into the same cosmic language spoken by his ancient counterparts. Skeptics propose he used simple block and tackle systems, but those who witnessed him work reported seeing no such equipment, only hearing him sing to the stones. Could he have been using acoustic resonance, that lost tool of the shadow architects, to reduce the effective weight of the coral? Or did he truly unlock a practical application of electromagnetic principles, using the Earth's own field to neutralize gravity? Coral Castle stands as a modern monument to the shadow architect's enduring mystery. It is a bridge across millennia, a tangible clue that the profound knowledge which built the pyramids and Baalbek may not have vanished entirely, but simply gone underground, waiting in fragments for a mind capable of piecing it back together. If one man in the 20th century could rediscover these principles, what does that say about the true potential of that lost science, and where might its remnants still be hiding today? The scattered monuments of the ancient world are not isolated masterpieces, but points on a single, invisible map. When we step back and view them as a global network, a startling pattern emerges, one that connects sites across continents through a shared language of mathematics and astronomy. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, aligns precisely with the Nazca lines along a specific Great Circle route, an imaginary line drawn around the Earth that represents the shortest path between 2 points. This is not a vague directional pointer, but a precise geodetic alignment spanning thousands of miles. Even more astonishing is the relationship between Giza and Angkor Wat. The distance between these two sites, measured in inches, equals the precessional number 25,920 divided by the mathematical constant pi. This is a relationship of such specific, numerical elegance that the odds of it occurring by random chance are almost non-existent. It suggests the shadow architects were not just building locally, they were participating in a global survey of the planet itself, pinning their sacred geometry to the very curvature of the Earth. These connections run deeper than simple alignments. The same mathematical constants appear again and again, a hidden code woven into stone across oceans and millennia. The ratio known as the Golden Ratio, or phi, governs the proportions of the Parthenon in Greece and the Great Pyramid in Egypt. The constant pi is encoded at the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan and in the dimensions of Stonehenge. The base of the natural logarithm, e, is found in the structures of Cambodia and Mexico. This is not a case of simple coincidence. It points to one of two profound possibilities. Either these diverse cultures independently discovered the same fundamental truths of the universe, a testament to the universal language of mathematics, or there was a level of cultural exchange and knowledge transfer in deep antiquity that our history books have completely missed. How could such knowledge have traveled? Were there secret sea routes, land paths, or initiatory journeys that connected these master engineers? Did they belong to a global, secret society with a shared curriculum, a hidden university that taught the sacred constants of geometry and the precise measurements of the Earth. The very stones themselves argue that we have drastically underestimated both the connectivity of ancient peoples and the power of these universal truths. This global pattern sets the stage for a final, unifying question about the ultimate purpose behind this planet-spanning project. Our journey through the forgotten workshops of history reveals a legacy not of kings but of minds. These shadow architects, from the celestial surveyors of Giza to the subterranean urban planners of Cappadocia, have left us a puzzle written in stone and alignment. Their achievements stand as a direct challenge to our linear narrative of progress, forcing us to reconsider the very peaks of human capability. These were not isolated geniuses, but the culmination of collaborative traditions, where knowledge was passed like a sacred torch from one generation to the next, allowing for projects whose scale spanned centuries. This hidden history teaches us a profound lesson, that true innovation often flourishes not in the spotlight of fame, but in the quiet dedication of the background. It suggests that our greatest leaps forward may come from anonymous collaboration and the patient accumulation of wisdom. The science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke once observed that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. The mystical aura surrounding these ancient sites may not be magic at all, but simply the ghost of a sophisticated science, a practical knowledge of physics, astronomy, and materials that was lost in the upheavals of time. This enduring mystery calls for both humility and optimism. It asks us to be humble about the assumptions we hold about the past and optimistic about the untapped potential of human ingenuity. The next time you see an image of a pyramid or hear of a lost city, I invite you to look past the pharaoh or the emperor and to wonder about the unseen engineer who made it possible. Which of their impossible achievements most captures your imagination? Share your thoughts, as the shadows of the past still have profound lessons to teach us about building our future.